So actually, there's this recent book by Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson that came out, I think, called Abundance, and it's a very provocative book. There is some. It's not really about AI. It's more about what a possible vision is for the future of the public sector over the next couple decades, let's say, till 2050. And I think the key thesis of their book, and this book just came out, I would encourage folks to take a look at it. It's a very provocative read. Their argument is that the purpose of government is really not ultimately to be efficient. The purpose of government, and I think what they mean, especially today, the purpose of government is to remove artificial forms of scarcity that inhibit flourishing and growth and the kind of life that most people want to live. That there are many scarcities with respect to, and it could be housing, it could be nutrition, it could be clean energy, it could be, any number of other services that we want there to be public service supporting, that are artificially constrained because of the fact that government has only ever worked in one way. And what AI allows, I think, really now on a week by week basis, is rethinking those boundaries and expanding that horizon of what we could make abundant if we wanted to. The number of material resources available, the capacity for millions of people to solicit online services that previously would have taken months or weeks, or frankly, sometimes years to have access to, could now in principle be delivered in a matter of minutes. There's no reason anymore, technically, why the public sector could not provide that. It's a remarkable moment that we're living in. Then the question is, how can we enable or supercharge that abundance? How can we remove those forms of scarcity now that we have the tools to do so? That's not a conversation about efficiency alone. It's a conversation
Yeah.
about what we want from government now that AI makes it possible.
And about what risks there might be involved in implementing that level of abundance that maybe not everyone thinks about at first. Which is why we have experts, which is why we have panels, right? But I really think that that's a beautiful sentiment, and I'm really glad that you shared that. What do you think about that, Avery? If you're there still, I know you've been having
I'm here. I'm
tricky
back.
issues.
I wish AI
Awesome.
would solve the internet and power issues at the hotel. I'm calling in from Portland, Oregon. Um, it's interesting. Is government supposed to be efficient? Is kind of blowing my mind right now because that's the business we've always been in. It's trying to make government efficient through the enterprise software or business process redesign. And it's such a pivotal moment because we go into clients and we spend time doing current state analysis. What's working, what's not working. Let's map your process. Let's find the inefficiencies. And lately it's been, why bother? Because let's take you to the future state. What does that look like? And there's a lot of resistance from the line users, right? The leadership may be very gung-ho about AI and its use for their operations, but the everyday worker that is issuing permits or helping you, pay some kind of tax, they just want to do their jobs. And so the question about how can we make you more efficient is now really challenging because we're starting to say, forget becoming efficient. Let's redo. Let's blow this thing up and let's go to the future because here's all the tools that are available. And it is a Wild West moment because to most people, AI is ChatGPT. To most people, AI is a chatbot. And couple that with the marketing efforts from big and small software companies that are saying we have AI-enabled ERPs. What does that even mean? Because a lot of them can't show you. And even if they have AI-enabled ERPs, there's nothing to show. The product still looks the same. But the promise is in the background, we have, we're going to multiply your workforce by 10,000 by using agents and AI-enabled agentic so-and-so. So to the everyday user, that doesn't mean anything because they just want to do their job. And I think we're in this flux moment where more talks about this, and educating that level of government worker is going to be really important, because it's going to come down to adoption. And the old joke is, when consultants show up, it's like, what's going to happen to my job? It's like Office Space. What do you think? What would you say you do here? I'm a people person. And that is going to be the critical skill going forward. But it's a slow burn. And the differentiation to me between private and public sector traditionally was, public sector can watch and learn what didn't work in the private sector. So many failure stories, right? And then you can leapfrog technologies. I think this is a moment where um, the more risk-taking government organizations can actually be on the forefront and not wait to see what works and doesn't work. In fact, they may not have the luxury of doing so. And we feel that too as a private organization. We need to be innovative in our methodologies and how we deliver services to our clients. We may not be a product firm, but the services we offer need to evolve with the times. So Wild West is, I think, the theme, and I think you're doing noble work by sort of shining the light in the corners that need light shined on.
I would like to also bring up the whole point. Now that we're a couple of minutes before probably the end of this, there's leadership that is gung-ho about AI. Yeah, there are workers on the front line who are worried about what's going to happen to their job, who are worried about what if the AI misses this one little thing and there's a domino effect and everything just like falls apart. But then there's the citizens. What do they actually want? What do they actually need? And how can private sector and public sector organizations somehow be in this conversation and invite citizenry into the conversation as well? Because I'm sure that you or I or the government, anybody who works in the government, could ideate all day about what people need, what people want, what people would benefit from. But sometimes there is a theory, there's a philosophy that you should just ask the people what they need and what they want. So I just wanted to make sure that voice was not silent in this conversation, because it's important, I think, for us as consultants and as people who build platforms and systems for making these kinds of decisions. It's important for us to consider that element in these conversations.
I think the citizens, we're all citizens, right?
Right.
All we want is I want my trash picked up. I want public safety. I want good education.
And I
And
want to
then
be
leave me
able
alone.
to change what day my garbage gets picked up by logging onto a website and selecting an option, rather than having to dig through a phone tree to talk to a person and then not even get an email saying that it got updated.
Yeah.
What is
That's
the
what I mean.
actual end goal? Yeah. What are the questions we need to ask?
And this goes back to a conversation about DAOs, right? Digitally autonomous organizations. That's the promise, is of this whole thing, AI and blockchain. How can we make this foolproof to the point where it just works? And I just want it to work. And that's me as a citizen saying, it's too complicated for good and bad reasons. And now is the time to think about, how do we really untangle this ball of yarn?
I think it's also
I
about
think that's a
self-determining.
conversation.
As Clay was saying, I mean, to return to the Wild West metaphor is operative here, right? So
Yeah.
if you're living in the Wild West and you think about what was AI, you can imagine like some kind of snake oil salesman coming to your house and saying, okay, here's a shotgun. This shotgun's really good. It's very accurate. And if anybody gets too close to your farm, you can just shoot them dead, right? But really, the way we got out of the Wild West eventually was we needed a sheriff. Like there needed to be people who were responsible in a certain county or city or whatever, who were able to create rules that people wanted for how their lives could work, and then could enforce them. That's really, I think, what we need to be seeing from the infrastructure behind AI. right now. And I think we are getting there, but I think that it is quite a journey. And unfortunately, these tools are often marketed in ways more towards the former story than this latter one. But I have hope that will shift.
Well, in the US, right, it is, if you look at what they allow in Europe, I don't think they have the latest models of OpenAI available to them because of regulation. So there is a point to be made about innovation and what that does to industry by holding it back, by not letting it have the ability to use latest models. But again, it's philosophical. These debates are ongoing across the world, and it's just cool to be in this spot as a human being, as people who have studied humans. This is such a cool moment in time. So let's talk about the opportunity available. And I'm really passionate about talking to people that are just coming out of college, thinking about, oh, I want to go get a master's degree in something. And I've always maintained that you better ask yourself why you want that. Do you want a piece of paper, or do you want to learn something? If you want to learn something, there's no better time in history to just go on YouTube or our channels and learn something new. And it's just opening up so much opportunity. Let's dig into that a little bit before we wrap up. What do you think of that, Tom? Is it, am I making this a little too dramatic for how cool of a time it is to be a human?
I think it's one of the most stimulating times to be a human that has ever existed. Certainly, I mean
Yeah.
the sheer wealth of information available. Then then there's the risk of a lot of that information, being not very useful or being inaccurate, right? And so I think what it really means to learn today, if we're thinking about young people, you're learning how to distinguish the signal from the noise in every area of your life, whether that's dating, whether that's good code versus bad code, whether that's, this book versus that book, this podcast or that one. We're in a media saturated world now completely. AI is driving that exponentially as well. Now you should embrace the challenge, but embracing the challenge does mean that we find new criteria for what is worth trusting. There aren't just three television channels anymore. There isn't just Encyclopedia Britannica, and you can't just go to the local dance and meet your high school sweetheart and spend the next 60 years together. I mean, maybe you can. There are still maybe sometimes that happens, but that's mostly not the world that we live in anymore.